Welcome to the Culture is Healing podcast, brought to you by Checking In. At Checking In, we create customized wellness tools for First Nations communities, centering each nation's language, culture, and traditions to support healing and well-being for their people. To learn more about our work at Checking In, please visit our website at checkingin.co. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode. Tchadas. Ichiwal, Antapat Huokolitsa, Nits Dominus, Halalt, Kawatsan, Liaxan. Hello, everyone. My traditional name is Huokolitsa. My English name is George Harris Jr., and I'm calling today from my home here in Staminas. This is the community that my father is from. This is the community that my mother married into. And this is the community my siblings and I were raised in. I belong to George Harris Sr. and my late mother, Sylvia Harris. And my grandparents from my father's side of my family are the late Lawrence and Irene Harris. My grandparents from my mother's side of my family are the late Bernard and Nora George. My familial connections to Halalt come from my mother, Sylvia, and my grandmother, Nora. My connections to Kawatsan come from my grandfather, Bernard. And through both sides of my family, I have familial connections to Liaxan. The name Huokoletsat is a name that's been passed down through my family from generation to generation. My father carries the name. He's passed the name on to myself as well as a few other family members as well. And so that is a little bit of who I am and where I come from. And I'd just like to welcome everyone to the Culture is Healing podcast. Like I mentioned, my name is Huokoletsat, and I am your host of the Culture is Healing podcast. And I have the honor and privilege of being able to sit in circle with my friend Tchadas. And I'd love to open the floor for Tchadas to introduce himself. Haichka.
Thank you, George. Man, thank you so much for introducing yourself and allowing some time in your schedule, my schedule, to line up very well to be here today. Like you said, my name is Tchadas Leo. I am Humalku from the Humalku First Nation, which now resides in Campbell River, just outside of Campbell River. Originally, we are the people of running waters from Butte Inlet, which is northeast of Campbell River, about an hour and a bit boat ride. And we, that is our traditional territory. My father grew up in Church House, and we've lived across Butte Inlet and across that entire region for millennia and relocated in the early 90s. So that's my Indigenous side from Canada. My name Tchadas is Native American from the Still-Wamish tribe of Indians. So I'm also Native American from the Still-Wamish nation, or the Still-Wamish tribe rather, down there. My grandfather, Frank Allen, was a fisherman, came up the coast, met my grandmother, and had one child, which is my father. And so that's how I am both Native American and Native Canadian. And my mother is Peruvian and Argentinian, and she has a beautiful lineage and a big family down there as well too. And we do have some Quechuan ties to the Andes of Peru as well too. So that is my background of who I am, and I live in Ladysmith, British Columbia now, which is not too far from you. And I'm coming to you from Victoria, British Columbia, and we're inside our podcast booth here at Czech Studios. So that's a bit about my background and at least my cultural background and where I am today. So thank you so much, George Eamlet, for having me here.
Haichka. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, a little bit about who you are and where you come from. And that's really cool that we, didn't realize how close we actually lived to each other.
Yeah, almost a stone's throw away.
Pretty much. And it was funny even just having those opportunities just to say, oh, have you checked out this place? Or have you checked out that place?
Yeah, the food, got old stock food for sure.
Sharing those notes from our hometown there. So
exactly.
Yeah, and so we'll jump into our questions, and we've shared here, culture is healing, is not just a name of a podcast. This is a culture is healing is something that means so much to so many of our indigenous people. We look to our culture to bring healing for us, and I think that there's so many opportunities for people to engage in culture, to bring healing and whatever that might look like for them. And um, yeah, I'd just love to hear what your thoughts are when I say like culture is healing.
Mhm.
What does that mean to you, Chadis?
Yeah, it means a lot of things, but generally, culture is healing for me has to do with engaging with teachings of our elders in our history
Mhm.
to try and undo the path of what colonization has intended or did intend to do to uh, all indigenous people across Turtle Island. So that healing really comes from, I would say, an internal battle from a lot of indigenous people of trying to find a way where they can take their culture and use it in a way where it creates this buffer and this sense of warmth in your heart to try and use that power of our ancestors to then recover from residential school,
Mhm.
attempted genocide and the recovery of alcohol and drugs. So for me in general, that's what that means to me. And in some more specific sense, there's some great examples that I'm learning and not only for myself personally, but also filming and airing it is seeing the modern approach of how we're using our culture for healing and relying more on ourselves as opposed to relying maybe more on the province or a
Mhm.
territory or a federal government to jump in. And my people, the Humalco people, we have now started a campaign that is working towards building funds to open a healing center on the
Mhm.
traditional territories where Church House once stood, where the village used to be before contact, during contact, and is no more. So that is an image in my head when I see culture as healing is being self-resilient,
Mhm.
self-reliant, and finding ways to build something with our culture, but with a modern touch to send our people to get that recovery, to get the help they need, to get the healing that they need. So that culture
Mhm.
is in and around it when it comes to architecture, when it comes to the way we're going to do things, to make sure there's one-on-ones and that there's elders available. And there's so many amazing examples, but that example really is fresh in my mind right now when it comes to culture's healing.
Mhm.
So that's that in a nutshell. I know I kind of went
Mhm.
everywhere with that, but
Mhm.
that's the image I have in my head is modern self-reliant ways to use our culture to heal.
Mhm. Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, and I love hearing the vision and the goal that your nation has for healing. To build a healing house.
Mhm.
For people to go to get back on that right path.
Yeah.
And that's a really big passion for myself and so many others on our team here at Checking In.
Mhm.
Um, we build customized wellness tools for First Nations communities, focusing on individual communities specific language, culture, and traditions to promote healing.
Mhm.
And a lot of this ties back to some of our own personal stories, like myself. Getting back on that right path, and I really look to my parents when I decided to push that bottle away. I look to how they carry themselves and what they were doing. And, they were attending our traditional longhouse. They had the opportunities to go around and help people in a cultural aspect. So, culture is healing is such a powerful statement. And
It really is. It's and I just had an opportunity to see it happen in real time
mm,
just a few days before we recorded this, and I was lucky enough to go on this year's canoe journeys
mm,
for one day. Did not do the whole
mhm,
journey, but I was very fortunate that my nation had invited me to come. thanks to some work that we did that we can talk about at the end. But it helped
Mm.
fund the journey this year, and so invited me out to come and to see the culture healing people and pushing them forward and having really beautiful conversations with each other, and obviously having a clean trip the whole way through
Mhm.
is important. And that's, again, a real time modern way of using our culture, although again travel journey is built from a past, but using it in a modern way to heal is really beautiful to see. And it was healing for me, even for the one day. It was super painful, but it was healing for one day. I haven't paddled like that in years.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's so cool, and I love seeing all the documentation that people you know are taking when they're going on these journeys in their personal lives. Just taking pictures and videos and posting on like Facebook and all these other forms of social media that we have, and it's just really cool to see everyone's perspective.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of a deeper dive into exploring more culture, and I always love to ask people um if they've had opportunities, and we get to hear about your recent journey, but I'd love to hear um a couple more examples, as well as cultural activities that you've had the opportunity to partake in that hold a special place in your heart.
For sure. Yeah, I think I jumped the gun on you there before you could ask me the
Oh, it's all
question. I'm
good.
sorry. As my our jobs here with, I mean, not so much in podcasting because you have this platform to kind of breathe and let people tell their stories. But
Mm.
when it comes to journalism, we're so used to like getting everything under 3 minutes, right?
Mhm.
So you'll see those in my answers. So I'll do my best to elaborate a bit
Oh,
more,
don't
not
worry
jump
about
the
it.
gun on you. But yeah, well, let's start with the culture activities. Obviously, like I mentioned, tribal journeys. I
Mhm.
remember being a kid, and I was 12 years old, and it's actually how I started. I guess my slow career into journalism and film and media was I was 12 years old. I had a camera that my mom purchased for me,
Mm.
and I just started to fall in love with filming things and telling people stories. And I had an opportunity to go on the tribal journeys. It would be in 2004, I believe. And so I just went along from Camp River. I think we went all the ways right over to Victoria or Vancouver. My mom came with me every step of the way. She was way too scared for me to get in the boat. She wouldn't let me go in the boat, being an only child. So I had this desire to learn more about canoe journeys, even if I didn't get into the boat. And I think at that time, my nation in particular and our culture was struggling, still is, but we're stronger now. But it was really a moment of like really grasping on to those teachings by elders, those moments of clarity and those moments of sadness. And even then we were bringing light to stories of residential school far before Kamloops had been announced. But that those cultural activities that I've been participating in start kind of from there. And I also really, when it came to this other day doing it, it was really brought me back to the importance of spending time with community members and listening and learning and giving elders the space to have those conversations with you. It was only one day that I was there. We went from
Mm.
Couch and Assayawat, but even in that one day, it had so much power to reconnect with my community, especially because we'll call myself an urban Indigenous male. I don't live on reserve, and I haven't lived on reserve since 2009. So it's been really beautiful through my work that I've been connected back to the community, and
Mm.
then get to do those culture activities once again and be invited as a guest to come and do it has been a real honor.
Mm.
Other culture activities I did a lot younger, which was language school. We did have a language program back in the day. We do have one now that's a lot stronger. But my mother at the time worked for the nation, and I felt very fortunate that I feel fortunate now that she put in all that work with everybody else in the team to try and preserve our language and
Mm.
teach our language back then. And I never appreciated it then as much as I appreciate it now. But that was a pretty strong activity for me. It was going to the preschool and
Mm.
sitting down and trying our best to learn the language, even though I was learning French and Spanish at the same time. So you can
Oh,
imagine how difficult that was for a kid my
yeah.
age.
Wow.
Still struggle now, even when I'm relearning some of our language now. It comes back, right? It clicks,
Mm.
but it takes a while. Definitely growing white hairs by the day. So but that's another cultural activity. And then smudging has been something that I've gotten back into intermittently when went back to school about 4 years ago for
Mm.
broadcast and journalism school. And that was out of necessity. I just
Mm.
felt so, there were so many hard days because I left, like when I went to journalism school was during COVID. When I
Mm.
decided my wife was pregnant and I left to go to school,
Mm.
and I sometimes I'd be gone for 2 weeks. I wouldn't come home, and my wife raised our son with my family for 2 years, and
Mm.
I needed a way to heal myself in a way where if I was struggling to take care of myself, smudging became a more recent cultural activity for me. And I was lucky that BCAT had the Indigenous Welcoming Center and Gathering Place where I could go and talk to mentors and counselors on how to just get through it all while you're going to
Mm.
school and still running our native land and
Mm.
getting ready to go into this career, which is obviously spiraled up in a good way. So yeah, I'd say those are the three. In a very long answer to your question, is the canoe journey has been important, the
Mm.
language of revitalization has been important, and then making sure to do smudging when I can
Mm.
is been an incredible useful part of my journey.
Mm. Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I love hearing everyone's perspective too, with in regards to their own opportunities and engaging in culture to promote healing. As this morning I had the opportunity to sit down and have coffee with a colleague, and her and I had the opportunity to chat, about you know exposure to cultural activities, and in specific, I had the opportunity to talk about my latest opportunities to partake in sweat ceremony,
Hmm.
and sharing about um, our colleague and friend, who lives just down the road from her. He has his own sauna, but when we get together, we kind of host things a little different when I'm around. So we do full rounds, and we have the opportunity to rinse off or take. He's got a cold plunge too, and do that stuff. And so yeah, I was just kind of sharing with her about how I utilize that time to um, work on myself, in specific. Um, it's been 2 years now since I've lost my mother, and so that's a time where I utilize that for healing for myself, to continue to learn and continue to grow. And even with my work with like culturally committed, having the opportunity to um, go with my brother Thomas, and he hosted our group to do a spirit bath down at Transfer Beach, and we were down there. Our cultural practices, we have to be down there early. You be down there, you be in the water, before the sun is fully up, and so that's kind of can be quite a culture shock for people right there within itself.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I know how
and so
cold
it
it can
was
get there too.
powerful.
I dipped there too, so.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice. It's a good spot, and it's accessible. And so yeah, it's a really really nice spot, and yeah, we had a really good time doing that. And yeah, so there's just all these really cool, opportunities that I have to partake in culture, to promote healing for myself. And yeah, I love it. I always take up those opportunities, and and it's cool to be able to bring others along for the journey too.
Of
Some
course.
who, I always love to say, like, we love to meet people where they're at. on their learning journey, whether they're in the beginning or they're in the intermediate, in the middle, or they're a little bit more advanced. Either way, it's a welcoming space for people to come in and learn and to grow and to heal.
Mhm. That's it's always beautiful to hear about that and hear how that works and the patience, the determination the community takes to meet people where they're at with that healing. And I definitely do want to be extremely clear that I'm not on a healing journey of any kind per se. I do drink socially, but you know, I I I understand the pain. I
Mm,
understand. I've seen it firsthand as a kid growing up on the reserve. Like I know what it looks like,
mhm,
and I know how hard it is to at least to see people try and get out of it. Um, and that's why I do a lot of what I do is because I like those inspirational stories like yourself,
mhm,
um, of what it takes and how hard it is to really push through, but how rewarding it is and all the
mm.
beautiful cultural things you can do to help yourself. It's funny you say sauna too. My dad and mom just got a sauna dropped off at their place
Yeah,
today.
nice.
And so we're really looking forward to doing this, having our sauna and, our wood fire in there and doing
Mhm.
it in more of this more quiet solitude zone as opposed to talking to a bunch of strangers. So in a public sauna. So
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to complain too much about that because I'll go off the rails. But the point is that it's nice to be able to use those modern approaches, but still be built within that perspective of culture and using it to move forward. And you also
Mhm.
have Yoda looking over your shoulder too, which
Oh
is
yeah.
super, super powerful.
Yeah, that's my little special guest on my couch back there. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's really cool too. Like, I don't think that everyone has to have, that same kind of past like myself to find healing. Much like, you and I have discussed, the hurts and pains that come from, colonialism, whether we like to admit it or not, I think we're all on a healing journey from that. Whether, I was sharing with a friend last weekend, we were talking about, the work I get to do and in the healing space. And I just said, yeah, everyone's got healing to do. Like, you know, for me, like in outside of my previous life of abusing alcohol, I'm the first, me and my sisters are the first generation in my family to not go to residential school, and taking a look at, our community, um, there's still a lot of residual effects from that, and then taking into consideration, the hurts and pains that are still in effect with in regard to, um, 60 scoop and, looking at the sheer amount and number of Aboriginal children in the child welfare system. Those are still huge effects that are happening for our people, whether that is affecting us specifically in our own individual lives or if it's a family one, a loved one who is affected. I personally have not been affected. I haven't been put in foster care, but I know family members who have had those hardships come to them because of that system. And so, there's a lot of healing that goes into the work and into our families and supporting our loved ones and our community through the continued hardship that our people face.
Mhm. Yeah, very good observation.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to hear some of the cool things that you and your family get to do and
Yeah,
you know.
it's been really nice, and it's again being in an urban environment and not living on reserve. You got to put in more effort. It doesn't
Mm,
come to you. It doesn't come to your property in Ladysmith or Crofton if your communities in Camp River or down, in down in Washington State. You have to search it,
yeah.
And I never in a million years would I think that my newfound career and passion for what I do would be reconnect me back to my community. I
Mm,
never went to journalism school or started this podcast in hopes that I would reconnect with my culture. I just thought this would be a great opportunity. Nobody's doing it. I'm going to do it.
mm,
But what came out of it is being incredibly rewarding, and talking to people like you, and hopefully inspiring a next generation of indigenous youth to see themselves in a way where they can be presenters, they can be part
mhm.
of the media, they can be the face of indigenous stories, but also be the face of other stories that aren't indigenous as well too. So it all has really great meaning. So
Yeah, it was really cool to actually, like, I remember, you know, first seeing you on like check, and you doing your proper introductions, and I was like, oh man, I'm like, that's one of our own on TV. I was like so like pumped up, and I got
that's
really
what
excited.
that's the
And so
reaction I was hoping
congratulations on
for.
the work
Thank you.
that you've done thus far. And as a newfound friend, I'll be there on the sidelines cheering you on, brother.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I live for those moments to hear people seeing themselves or seeing a version of themselves when I show up, and yeah, it's I'm always really striving to be very forward of who I am and my culture, but not let it define everything I do every day. But if it comes in naturally in the conversation, comes in naturally into a story, then I'm gonna run with it, right? I'm gonna use my knowledge and the
Mm,
trust that I'm building with people because of my background and who I am. But it's not doesn't define me 100%, but it has a huge attribute and power to what I do every day. So no,
mm,
thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah. Yeah, and so as we're kind of looking into um our next question, kind
Hmm.
of deeper diving into some of those cultural aspects. I'd be love to hear um some of the teachings that have been passed on to you that you hold close to your heart.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the teachings that I've had, the few that I've had, have been quite a bit more recent,
Mm,
and they've kind of come as I've built this, career that I'm starting here. And I wish when I was a kid, I would have maybe paid more attention to some of those teachings because my memory evades me now
mm,
whenever I was told some things when I was younger. But the biggest thing I've kind of learned in the past few years is building this level of patience.
mm,
We're in a time, especially with myself being in media, that the human attention span is so small. It's the
mhm.
scrolling. I think it's like 7 or 9 seconds. If you don't catch somebody's attention, they're just going to
Wow.
swipe. Um, and as we see a decrease in appointment television and appointment broadcasts, sit down, I'm going to watch something at a certain time kind of environment as people move towards streaming platforms and
Mm,
whatnot. That attention span again is trying to capture people's attention. The reason why I bring all that up is because when I first started this career, when I was talking to knowledge keepers, elders,
mm,
language people, I was so much in a rush because I just wanted to do everything all the time. And I've had knowledge keepers and elders tell me to slow down and to
mm,
listen. And I
mhm,
think that's the biggest thing that's helped me grow this career and do what I do. And it fulfills me internally as a me as an indigenous person, that I can really slow down and cherish words that are
mm,
being said, understand where the pain is coming from. There's sometimes I might reach out to somebody to do a story, and I get there, and if it's I have time, I'll actually leave the camera and the tripod in the car, and I'll just go talk, and I'll just
mm,
hang out for a bit, and then I
mhm,
bring the camera out. Or sometimes I'll arrange on my day off when I'm not even getting paid. I'm like, I need to go and see this person, hang out and build a relationship with
mm,
them. And then maybe the next time a story comes up that I really need their voice and their opinion, and maybe a bit of their pain even,
mhm,
to help get a story across. Say need their pain sounds awful, but I hope you understand what I mean by that. But um, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have the patience. I'm going to
mhm,
take the time. Also, I grew up on the reserve with dial-up, so I mean, like, dial-up internet, man, like, you gotta go load some pages, go have a
Mhm.
sandwich, come back, and then you can do your homework. So,
Yeah.
I had that, but then, as we move and we grow in this environment where, like I said, our attention span has gotten so much harder to reel in, so I'm really using that teaching right now.
Mhm.
I mean, I other teachings are, just how to do sponging, how to put yourself in a mindset for smudging. It's a bit of a
Mm.
smaller perspective, but just making sure you're in a good, even if you're not in a good place, but put yourself in a good place mentally before you go to kind of build yourself up into a space where you're going to allow yourself to be healed,
Mm.
instead of just I'm at my lowest point. I need this because it's going to fix me. It's not it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't work for me. Maybe it does for others, but I found that teaching of again it involves a bit of patience, but also like put yourself in a space where you're willing to feel the recovery or
Mm.
willing to feel the power of that smudging. And so
Mhm.
that's, I guess, would be my second teaching that hold dear to me is when I'm ready to do that, that I'm trying to clear my head, even if it's filled with so much mess and I'm
Mm.
going through some kind of mental breakdown or whatever the case might be, or anxiety. I really take that teaching to heart and make sure that I clear my mind before I go and do it.
Mm.
And I mean that, and even then, it just feels better. It
Mhm.
really feels better. So, those are the two main teachings that I've had. And if I have more time, and I will have more time in community as time goes on, and I get to
Mhm.
rebuild a lot of memories and new memories with my Homalco family as
Mhm.
time goes on, then I'm really looking forward to that. But those are the two really, really strong ones that resonate with me.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I know, I remember, like, we're talking about, like, recent teachings, and I know for me, like, one of the more recent ones that I carry super close to me is comes from my Uncle Tom. And so shout out to Uncle Tom for this teaching, because he really so I moved away from my reserve and my community for about 5 years. I was away at college and I was living in Abbotsford, and I was lucky enough that my uncle took time out of his life to pour into me, and especially when I was away, because I was, for me anyways, that was my first time moving
Yeah,
out of my
away from
comfort zone, my
community. Yeah.
community, and growing up on, it's my community. Obviously, to get out this way, it's a drive. It's 15-20 minute drive to get into town, and it's fairly remote. But yeah. So living in the city, I was really homesick, and my uncle, and I love this because he called me every 2 weeks. So I got to talk to him like twice a month, and we would just chit chat, and it would only be about 10-15 minute call. But at the end of every call, he always just said to me, like, Junior, he's like, you remember who you are and where you come from. And then he would hang up on me. He
Oh
didn't say
wow.
goodbye. That was his way of saying goodbye. He would say, remember who you are and where you come from. And that became our routine. And I got to look forward to that. And when I finished school, all I could hear was Uncle Tom telling me, like, remember who you are, where you come from. And I was just like, oh man. So when I finished school, I was like, well, I think I gotta go home.
Hmm.
So moved back home, and started working in community, and started trying to do my best to help my people in any way I could.
Hmm.
And so that was really something that, like, rang close in my heart, and I loved hearing you talking about taking that time to slow down, and I was listening to a relative. His name's Kwasanahan, and he was sharing with one of our communities, culturally committed, and he was saying, you listen to our elders, listen to how they talk. They take their time when they're speaking because they want to make sure that every word that comes out of their mouth is correct. They're very meticulous that way. And he's like, so I always try and emulate that, so that I'm being intentional with my words, taking that time to slow down, because and this is something that my grandma always told me too, and I loved hearing it from Kosanahan and his elders too. He's like, we only got so much time on this earth, and we have to make the best of the time that we have here. And we do that by, everyone thinks the more I do, the more I say, the better things are going to be. But, it's, less is more sometimes. And so, like, taking that time to slow down and, really thinking about what I'm going to say before I say it, really having that opportunity. And, one of the practices hold on a second, I uphold that my grandma passed on to me was like being intentional and lighting a candle before you start work.
Oh wow!
And
Never heard of that.
she said you do that to really set the tone for your day. She always used to say, you never know what the creator has in store for you. All you can do is prepare yourself emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually for your day. And she's like, and she said, that candle, that light, really helps you set that tone and that intentionality. And so, even when I'm doing my work, this is something that I always have going, and it's expensive, but it's nice at the same time, though.
That was my next journalism question: is how many candles you go through?
about if it's a size like this, I'll go through this one in probably a month.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one's almost done. I was a little bit sick a couple weeks ago, so it was like I had a couple days off work, so got a little bit of a break. So
yeah, sure. Well,
yeah,
it's really cool
and
to
it's
hear.
kind of cool. It's kind of rubbing off on some of our team members. Like I know my colleague Sean, he's getting into candles now too, and our producer Carissa, she's kind of getting into the candles a little bit here and there too. So it's really cool to see.
Nice.
That teaching, going outside of my family and really impacting people, and people are taking that teaching from my grandmother and applying it to themselves and their lives. So yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, and so those are the types of things that I think about when I'm thinking about teachings that I partake in on a regular basis. So thank you for sharing your stories, and thank you for allowing me to share mine.
Of course, yeah, no, I really appreciate hearing your stories. It's so interesting, and I forget every time, and then I go on other people's podcasts, and all I want to do is ask you 100 questions. But I know I'm the guest, so I try and refrain myself. But
Oh no,
I
ask
just
away.
if I had one question, I just, you know, wh- how does it feel to use your own experience and your own healing to help others and get it actually paid to do that work? Like, obviously we need to get paid to live
Yeah.
and pay the bills, but like, how beautiful is it for you to actually be able to do this as a living? It must be rewarding. I promise that's my only question
Oh
for you.
no, you can ask many more, my friend, and then I'm sure over our friendship we'll have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions to each
For
other.
sure.
Yeah, I think for me, I really look to my grandma Nora a lot. She had a significant impact on my life, and I always tried to carry myself the way she carried herself when she walked this earth. She was a huge um, helper. She did a lot of cultural work for people all across Turtle Island, and a lot of my family members are carrying on that tradition of being helpers. My mom, she carried herself that way. My uncle Tom carries himself that way, and my sisters are cultural helpers, and I have the opportunity to share teachings, much like I just shared of from my grandma about the candle and being able to share some of those teachings and when I moved into doing this work, I actually had taken time to ask. So I went and asked my mom and dad. I was like, "Hey, like, this opportunity is coming up. Like, is it okay if I go and do this? Because obviously, throughout this work, I'm going to be talking about you a lot. And is that okay?"
Mhm.
And my mom was like so happy. She's like, "Oh, it's about time, and thank God you're going to go forward and do this because this is what the Creator has called you to do."
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And then so um, I went next to my uncle Tom and sat down with him and I said, "Hey, Unc, like, um, this opportunity is coming up. Undoubtedly, I'm going to be talking about some of the teachings that you've shared with me. Is it okay if I go forward and do this? Like, if you say no, I'm not going to do it."
Mhm.
And he just smiled. And he's like, "It's about time, Junior." I'm like, "Ah, okay, cool. That's
Ooh.
awesome." And then lastly, I went and spoke with my sister, Daniela. She's 13 years older than me. So she was kind of like a second mother. And so I just asked her, as a sister, is like, I have this opportunity. I'm going to be talking a lot about like cultural stuff and teachings and obviously I'm going to be sharing a lot of our family stuff. I'm like, "Is it okay?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, like I think it's good that you're doing this and you know, you have the confidence to be able to speak in front of people." She's like, "By all means, like I think you should do it." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And so
Oh.
yeah, it's been awesome to move forward with my family's blessing and the platform that my work here has provided me to host conversations like this.
Mhm.
This is a really amazing opportunity to talk about culture and healing and really bring our people's voice to the forefront and talk about some of the really cool things that we get to do and sometimes even talk about some of the hard things that we get to do. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
the
sharing
question.
that with me. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing it. Your turn now. You can ask me questions now. I was just so curious I had to ask.
Oh yeah, yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and so like we've heard of some of the stories that you've had to partake in and teachings that you've received. I always love to ask our guests if they would um, bring any words of advice forward for our listeners to the Culture Ceiling podcast.
Oh, some words of advice in regards to just cultural and healing in general, or like kind of little things that I do, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be both or.
That's good. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, usually when I'm asked for advice, it's usually more on a technical scale of what I
Mm,
do for work. So this will make me really pull on the brain cells here.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm really I mean the advice is you know I for me I'm really fueled on what I do outside of my family life. Like my work is really important to me. I really care about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, and part of that work also helps me um, learn about my culture, my heritage, and others. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest advice I give for people or listeners is there's so many things always going on. We always feel like we're so busy and
Mm,
stress and money and life and things are moving fast. But if you can find a way to really be find something that really brings you joy.
mm,
And I know that's so hard sometimes because this economy we live in, sometimes we just got to go and make money, even if it doesn't make us happy.
Mm,
And I always like to try to encourage people, like, there has to be a way
mhm,
to do what you love to do and make money. And you might not be able to get at it in a month or in a year. It might take you 5 years, but there has to be a way.
mm,
And so I always try and give people that advice because they ask, like, how did he do it? I'm like, well, I was just really passionate about this, like the show Our Native Land, when I
mm,
first showed up here. And I just fell in love with it. And I was like, how do I keep doing this type of work and support my family and do the things we want to do? And it was, again, the persistence. Just be
mm,
persistent, be patient, find something you love. It won't feel like work. There's still going to be bad days,
mm,
but it won't matter because you're going to have far more good days than bad days.
mm,
And you never know what that pursuit of happiness will give back to you, especially
mhm,
culturally. So if you're, like, again, somebody indigenous listening to this, and you, even if you're doing a job that, again, doesn't really have any, direct correlation to your culture or indigenous people, you might be surprised that you might find a way back.
mhm,
And just to give it a try, because I never went into journalism because I wanted to do indigenous stories. I promise you that. I did because I wanted to be a journalist and I wanted to tell everybody's stories. But what
mm,
came of it was something so much bigger, something so much cooler. The opportunity to connect to those people in my culture and still do everybody else's. So be patient, do what you love. It'll work out. And it might not be tomorrow, but it will work out. So that'd be my advice.
mm,
Convoluted advice.
mm, for sure. Yeah, I know. Like that's very powerful, and thank you for sharing that. And I know, um, needless to say, like you've definitely inspired me. When I got to see you that first time on TV, and then starting to follow your work a little bit more, and seeing you on check, and having that opportunity. I came into doing this, and I was very reluctant at first because I was like, oh man, like I don't know if I could do anything like that. And I just kind of found my stride, and taking those small leaps of faith forward, one step at a time. And this is a really unique space for sure. I'm not aware of any other podcasts that are conducting themselves like this, and so that made me feel fairly good. And I just love hearing people's perspectives. And thank you for coming and sharing your perspective on sharing a little bit of who you are, where you come from, sharing your culture and your teachings, and love hearing your stories, and the advice that you have to share. So I appreciate you taking the time,
Yeah.
the conversations beforehand and the phone call, and
Hmm.
and come and sitting in circle here today. I can't thank you enough for taking this time. So
Of,
I
of course. No, Ema, thank you so much. And this is an example of me trying to slow down and take the time to have these conversations, because a lot of time when I go on podcasts, I got a half hour or less. It's in the middle of a work day.
mm,
And I know for this one, I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity to slow down, get to know you, really get, in depth, about who I am, but also the things that my culture can provide me and maybe advise other people to look into. So yeah, no, I appreciate it too.
mhm,
This has been wonderful.
yeah. And so I'd love for to open the floor to you as well, before we start to say our goodbyes, for opportunities for you to share about the work that you're doing, and people, the way that people can engage with the work you're doing as well. And so I'd love to open the floor to you for that.
For sure, you could just roll all the video commercials I sent you. I'm kidding. Um, yeah, I mean, part of my work is involved in, healing and culture and language preservation, and one of the projects we've been working on as a team for the past, oh man, 3 years now,
Mhm,
was a podcast and a graphic novel based off of our elders' recordings. So
mm,
you might remember what I told you earlier in the show about, like, my mother doing all this work and really not appreciating and
mhm,
understanding how important this is. And then fast forward to a few years ago where I was approached by Educators Without Borders and the Raven 100.7 FM, which is the radio station that nation owns, Humalco First Nation owns. And all of a sudden, we got these recordings of these elders. You seem skillful enough that you'd know what you'd need to do to turn this around and make it a podcast and all this great stuff. And as I were going through the recordings, and I agreed to do this, my assistant went through some of the recordings. I'm going through the recordings, and I'd hear my mom in the background talking, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh, that's what she was doing. That's what she was doing, and how important that was. And now I'm grabbing the work she did when I was a teenager or a kid and didn't know how important it was, and turned it into a podcast. And so we've turned that into a podcast. It's on Spotify. It's called Remember Our History, Our Culture from Our Elders. And that podcast being completed. And then again, Education Without Borders, we want to turn this podcast into a graphic novel. And that was a whole new leap for me. I knew I'm a storyteller and I can tell people stories, but to put something so interesting like that together, I never heard of that being done before. Off we went again. And so we just finished that project about a year ago from this conversation. We've launched the book. It's an extremely well. They're selling in school districts across the province, especially to our sister nations, La'ame and Klahoose. So that's really exciting, and we're really blessed for that. I'm blessed that was a really beautiful way for me to connect to my community and my culture. So that's one project on the go. And as of just a few days ago, we just found out that we're going to be able to digitize the first novel onto UBC's Indigenous cultural website so that teachers can use it across the country. And then they can use a teaching guide, and then there'll be some recordings. So we're just in the beginning process right now to actually turn that into a more digital format, more accessible, so teachers can teach our language and culture and stories across the country. And we want to see if there's ways we can turn it into French as well too. So Quebec or Métis cultures want to read, we'll have it in French and in our Ijutham language. And we're just in the process of finalizing some funding, which I think should go through. But either way, we are determined to make a second novel as well too. So that is on the cusp of happening. So that's really exciting. And yeah, otherwise we're also in the pre-production stage of Our Native Land. We're doing lots of meetings right now, lots of emails flying everywhere to plan the next 13 episodes of Our Native Land, which will air sometime in early 2026. So those are kind of the things that I've been rocking and rolling with. So I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share all that. There's lots of great stuff. And if anybody wants to know anything of what I'm doing or what the nation's doing, it's all on my website. So people can go to www.chadasleo.ca, which is TCHADASLEO.ca. And yeah, there's my social medias right on the homepage and lots of information there. So if anybody is really interested in learning about more of what I have on the go and what the nation's doing, then that's a great spot. So thank you for opening the floor for a little bit of a selfless promotion.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that sounds really exciting, and I, look forward to hearing more about it, and when the process gets going, and when you conclude that, and keep up the good work and keep inspiring people with the way you carry yourself and your work, and just continue to remember who you are, where you come from, and I love seeing you on TV, my friend.
Thank you so much, George. I really appreciate it. I will remember who I am and where I came from, and I'm going to use that advice. So thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I'd like to thank all the listeners for tuning in today, and we will catch you all in the next one. Aichka, Eowit.